Hello, and thank you for watching this regional forecast for the Corn Belt. I'm Andrew Pritchard, meteorologist with Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, a couple storylines to talk about here over the next 7 to 10 days. First, we do have a compact little storm system making its way through the central and southern plains, bringing some snow to portions of Kansas. Winter storm warnings in effect here in the Dodge City area, 4 to 7 inches of a heavy, wet snow possible there. As we head through the next 4 or 5 days into the weekend and very early next week, overall northwest flow within the jet stream is just going to keep us in a pattern here where little clippers are moving through the region from the northwest to the southeast, really moisture starved and only able to produce very light snow flurries, and we'll talk about that more in depth here as well. As we head into early next week, though, we do see a pattern adjustment, trough in the west now, with southwest flow in the upper levels of the jet stream, and that is going to lead to some changes across a big chunk of the Corn Belt. Now, as we get started here on Tuesday morning, looking at the National Weather Service hazards map, again, the purple shading here across western Kansas, winter weather advisories with that pink shading in there. That is a winter storm warning, again, in the Dodge City area into portions of the Oklahoma Panhandle into northwest Oklahoma. As you look across parts of the Ozarks here, southern Missouri, we do have a winter weather advisory in that region as well. And then elsewhere across parts of central Illinois, central Indiana, we've got some patchy fog, maybe some patchy drizzle or flurries as we head through the day today as well. Looking at the satellite picture here, infrared satellite, again on this Tuesday morning, here's the compact little storm system we see making its way through the area. The entire Corn Belt basically under clouds today. Even if you look at the eastern Corn Belt here, a little lighter shading, but that is just a very low blanket, again, that very dreary, common, winter sky across this region. So unfortunately, a gloomy week ahead across much of the Corn Belt as well. So as we look at the radar picture, again, plenty of rain shower activity across Oklahoma, down into eastern Texas, across southwest and south central Kansas. This is falling in the form of a heavy wet snow, maybe a wintry mix out ahead of that, but again, certainly some big, this is the kind of thing that produces those golf ball, baseball sized snowflakes out there, and it compacts into a very heavy, packable snow. So again, that is the situation here. This will continue through midday across portions of Kansas. Now, as we look at the temperature map again, here's that little core of cooler air that tried to move in, really struggling and being eaten away at here as we head into the early part of the week. You can see the warm air advection in advance of the storm system now that it's impacting the central and southern plains, the rain in that area, and then the very heavy wet snow across portions of Kansas. As we take a look at the high-resolution rapid refresh, just looking at the snow across the Kansas area, we do expect that to begin to wane as we head into the later part of the day, into the mid to late afternoon. We'll start to see that snow coming to an end, certainly tapering off by the time we get to the evening across southwestern Kansas and south central Kansas, but then as we get into the late evening and early overnight, perhaps some snow flurries falling across portions of eastern Kansas, getting into the Kansas City area, up into portions of Iowa. If we look a little further out, a national look at the high-resolution NAM model doing the same thing, heading through the day today, watching for that heavy wet snow across this corridor here from southwest Kansas into south central Kansas. As we get into the overnight hours tonight, heading into, we'll stop here at midnight, continuing to watch this storm system lumber off to the east and to the southeast, begins to get a little moisture starved, and we'll talk about why that is here in just a moment as well. But we could maybe see some light snow flurries from southern Minnesota through parts of Iowa into south central Missouri. This is where we could see slightly higher, maybe 1 to 3 inches of snow here, where that winter weather advisory is in effect. As we head into Wednesday morning, sunrise on Wednesday morning, possibly some snow flurries across this region here. We don't see the entire radar being lit up, but certainly the potential for some light snow flurries across this region as we head through the day on Wednesday. No accumulation expected associated with this. And again, you see it moving off to the east, really running out of moisture. And again, we're going to talk about why that is here in just a moment. Heading into Thursday, relatively quiet conditions here, maybe some snow flurries across parts of Kentucky and Ohio, the far eastern Ohio River Valley, and then maybe some snow flurries across parts of the northern and central high plains as well during the day on Thursday. Total snow accumulation through Thursday. So we're looking at Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday here. Again, here is the area where the winter storm warning is in effect here. 4 to 7 inches of heavy wet snow possible there. 1 to 3 inches of snow possible across south and south central Missouri, kind of along the Interstate 70 corridor approximately there. And again, a very heavy wet snow expected with this as well. As we talk about total liquid precipitation through the same time frame, so taking us through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, can see along and south of this line, this is where we're picking up north of 1/10 of an inch. So really not talking about any form of really soaking precipitation, the heaviest of which across the Corn Belt you head off toward the Dodge City area. And that again where the heavy wet snow falls here with the equivalent of maybe 1/2 to 1 inch of liquid precipitation. Now as we talk about the jet stream, again, very disorganized flow across the lower 48. We see this core of strong winds blasting in south of the Gulf of Alaska into British Columbia, the Pacific Northwest. As we talk about the U.S., we're kind of watching this trajectory from the northwest to southeast with these little embedded, kind of weaker storm systems here, kind of cut off from the very strong jet stream winds. So we'll play this out, and then we're going to help or kind of look at what this does down at the surface. So we'll go ahead, we'll step through time with this, taking it into the late part of the week. We're into Thursday and Friday at this point. Again, relatively disorganized flow across the Corn Belt. We do see this streak come blasting in as we get into the weekend out of the Canadian Prairie. This will bring in the chance for some very light snow across part of the region. But again, watching this northwest to southeast trajectory within the jet stream until you're starting to see a little trough again kind of stuck here across the U.S. and Texas border, which is going to be picked up here by a trough that comes digging in across the western half of the U.S. and then overall leading to a big, now we see much stronger southwest flow across the region. So it happens gradually as we head through the back half of the weekend into early next week. When we make that change from a relatively disorganized flow from the northwest to the southeast to much stronger flow out of the southwest U.S. So as we look at vorticity, Eric and I show this a lot where we see the color shaded areas. That's areas of vorticity within the mid-levels of the atmosphere. That's spin within the atmosphere. And that helps us understand where we could see the development of low pressure at the surface, cloud cover, and precipitation as well. So here's the disturbance right now across the Central Plains. That Vort Max right now across the Texas Panhandle, that's what's helping to lead to the rain across this area and the heavy wet snow across the Kansas and Oklahoma border. As we take this into the middle part of the week, so we'll just step through slowly, watching this progress, kind of taking that west to east track. We'll then get into Friday and Saturday. This is when we watch that wave come in from the north. You're seeing the front right there, and then the vorticity maximum associated with that. But again, just noting the northwest to southeast trajectory here until we get to the end of the week. We take the drawings off here, getting into Sunday and Monday now. Here is the wave across the Texas-Mexico border, and then here is the wave that comes in from the north across the Pacific Northwest. Watching these kind of phase together and then dig in across the central U.S. And now we don't have good understanding yet of how this phasing is going to happen. Right now, the European model, which we're looking at, wants to kick this lead wave out first, and then bringing the other wave in behind it. Something like that, becoming kind of elongated, almost attached to this trough across the Hudson Bay, kind of lingering a front across the region. So very unclear how this actually evolves, but it does look like that is where our pattern adjustment will come. And I say adjustment because it's not yet clear that this is a long-term change by any stretch of the imagination either. So we've looked at the upper level jet stream, we looked at the vorticity associated with that. Let's understand why these are a little bit moisture starved now by looking a little bit lower at the 850 millibar winds, so our low-level jet. Let's go ahead, we'll step through time with this one again, watching first the compact storm system swirling across the southern plains. And again, the lower level low actually moving from the northwest to the southeast here, kind of sinking off to the south. So what happens is, early on we've got really strong winds coming off the Gulf of Mexico. That's helping feed this storm system with moisture, producing the heavy rain and the heavy wet snow across the central and southern plains. So you get a little bit further out, this thing actually sinks a bit further to the south, so we're not quite getting that strong pull of moisture northward ashore across the southern U.S. So that is why we kind of lose a little bit of steam with that storm system as it moves off toward the southeast. Let's look at the wave that comes in on Friday, or Friday into Saturday. Again, this is the one that could bring some light snow flurries to parts of the Great Lakes. Where's the trajectory here with the low-level winds? It's coming out of the west, coming out of the northwest. So again, this is not a path that's going to feed this storm system with any sort of deep moisture. We do bring some moisture in from the Pacific. That's why we could see maybe some light snow flurries associated with it. But we're not tapping into the Gulf of Mexico with a trajectory like this at all. So again, that's why we see the, kind of a train of short waves or clippers coming out of the Canadian Prairie across the northern plains into the Great Lakes, but a trajectory that's not going to feed these with any sorts of deep Gulf moisture. That is until we get into next week. What happens when we take the upper level jet stream flow, flip it from the northwest, and start bringing really strong jet stream winds out of the southwest. So we've got our jet stream now in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, really strong out of the southwest. Well, now we're tapping into the Gulf of Mexico as we get into Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week, bringing those low-level winds, ramping that low-level jet up out of the south, out of the southwest, and again, feeding that moisture into the Ohio River Valley. So then we can take a look at the precipitation forecast, understanding what happens with that, then watching our first storm system that we've covered really in depth begin to kind of sag off to the southwest with the main area of low pressure kind of riding along the Florida Panhandle. Again, this is where, as we get into the day on Wednesday, perhaps some very light snow flurries across this region from the mid-Mississippi Valley into the Ohio River Valley. Not expecting any measurable precipitation with that. As we get into Friday and Saturday, here comes that one wave out of the northwest, out of the Canadian Prairie, bringing maybe some light snow flurries to parts of the Great Lakes, primarily talking about as we get into this would be Friday and Saturday morning, then getting snow flurries across parts of Wisconsin into Michigan, maybe some higher snow rates across Michigan and then parts of northern Ohio as we get into Saturday evening. With the flow coming out of the northwest, perhaps a short period of some lake effect snow, but that is when we quickly, as we get into Sunday and Monday, start to flip things around with flow coming out of the southwest, feeding into the potential developing storm system as we get into the Tuesday and Wednesday time frame. We're not going to talk about precipitation amounts. We're not going to talk about snow at this point because we're just too far out, too many uncertain outcomes here or how the evolution is really going to transpire. So certainly stay tuned with the forecasts that we post later on this week as we kind of hone in on it. Just letting you know this is out there though. The potential for some snow across the Central Plains into the Great Lakes, the potential for another round of rain here across the Midwest into the Ohio River Valley as we get into all the way into next Tuesday around the January 28th, to the February 4th and 5th time frame is when we're looking at this. Total precipitation then, understanding it's a very dry pattern as we get through the next week or so. Again, primarily seeing most of the precipitation on this map occurring over the next 24 to 48 hours across this region. Otherwise, just talking about the very light opportunity for some snow flurries. Comparing the European on the left to the American GFS on the right, we see a very similar outcome. The heavier precipitation off to the south associated with this early storm system. Otherwise, just looking at the potential for some very light snow flurries every couple of days from the northern plains into parts of the Great Lakes and the eastern Corn Belt. The probability of 3 inches or more of snow accumulating through Tuesday from the European on the left, the GFS on the right as well. Here you see the pocket here occurring over the next 24 hours or so. Otherwise, you're kind of hard-pressed to find an area that's expected to get more than 3 inches of snow unless you head well off to the north across parts of the northern Great Lakes and parts of the Great Lakes that could tap into some of the lake effect snow here, primarily talking about the UP of Michigan, northern Michigan, and then far northeastern Ohio. So a relatively quiet but gloomy next 4 to 5 days. And of course, this map cuts off before we get that storm system that moves in potentially around Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. So we have to understand we do have a pattern change happening. So again, we're going to kind of bring a trough into parts of the central U.S. In advance of that, though, we bring a ridge, so we will see those temperatures warming up. A bit of a roller coaster here, not as dramatic as we've seen over the last month or two, but we will see those temperatures warm in advance of the upcoming trough. And that occurs during the last half of the weekend, getting into early next week, seeing a period of much warmer than average temperatures here across the central part of the country. And then we will cool down as we bring that trough in. But again, everything we're seeing right now does not suggest that this is going to be any sort of Arctic outbreak that anchors itself across the Corn Belt. We're looking at kind of dipping back to slightly below average, perhaps just a run of seasonally appropriate temperatures here across the Corn Belt. So we do transition to a cooler pattern around February 4th and 5th during the middle part of next week, but no sign right now that we're going to be plunging into any sort of Arctic basement, not talking about a polar vortex disruption at this point, just something we'll continue to watch as we head into the month of February. We'll finish then just looking at the high temperatures for the next few days across the region. Go ahead and jump back. Of course, this map plays extremely fast. Your highs for the day on Tuesday, the teens in the north, 40s and 50s across Tennessee. That is your warm spot. As we head into the day on Wednesday, again, lower 20s across a big chunk of the Midwest here, the upper Midwest from the Dakotas into northern Missouri. Here are your highs on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now we're warming as we begin to do that pattern change. Trough in the west, ridge developing in the east. We'll see those high temperatures continue to warm as we head into Sunday and Monday, with 50s back on the table here across areas as far north as central Illinois and central Indiana. Your overnight lows for the next few days as we bring this back, waking up tomorrow to temperatures in the single digits in northern Minnesota, temperatures in the mid-30s across the mid-south. Similar story, steady temperatures again with disorganized, weaker flow in the jet stream across the lower 48. We're not going to see rapid changes in our weather pattern here. So nearly stable temperatures until we get to the back half of the week and into early next week, when we're going to start to see that warming trend and advance of that trough in the southwest before we cool off during the middle to later part of next week.